Okay, this is just a quick video to demonstrate a simple reloading setup for 223. I've been meaning to make this video just to show a couple of people how little equipment there is required for reloading, and just to show how the process is a bit more simple than some people may imagine it to be. You do need to be careful, you need to be deliberate, and you need to have a work area that's clean and not distracting when you're loading, because you are working with materials that could blow up in your face. So with that, we'll get started. This is my turret press. It's a Lyman-ST Turret press that I bought from a fellow MSGO member in the classified section for $30. This press came with, it didn't come with a shell holder, and it did not come with a set of dies here, but it came with the main press itself. The press is in good working order. It's very smooth. The handle is pretty stout. So far I haven't had any problems with it. But when you're talking about reloading, the first thing you need for reloading a particular caliber is the dies for that particular caliber. And these three items here screw into this turret, and each of these dies performs a different function. So let's see. This first die here has a pin which pops out the old primer cap in your shell, and the body of this die is shaped to reshape the neck and casing, or the neck portion of the case, to get it so that it'll hold the bullet correctly again. The next station I have is just a blank hole so that I can put a primer cap in it. And then the station after that is the bullet seating die, where you actually put the bullet down into a case once you've applied powder to it. This fourth die I don't really use a whole lot right now. It's a factory crimp die, and it puts the crimp mark around the top of the shell to match what a factory load would have. This is a three-piece die set from Lee, and these come in a nice little tin like this. They come with, or not a tin, but a plastic box, and it comes with all three dies. Comes with a package, a booklet, which has a bunch of different loading data for particular bullet weights, and so these let's see here, this column here is different brands of powder, and then you have different sections here for whether you have 60 grain, 62 grain, 62 grain, 63 grain, 65 grain, all the way up to 80 grain bullets. And it shows you how much powder to load and what the expected velocity will be, and the overall length of the finished shell should be. But that same information is also in a reloading manual, which is handy to have, necessary to have. I caught this Handbook of Reloading on sale for, I think I paid $19 for it. But the first part of the book is basics on how to reload, what's involved with reloading, and then as you get on into the book, it goes into particular Hornady brand bullets and basic recipes, so to speak, for loading that bullet with commercial types of powder. Now, like I said, what I'm loading is, right now it's just 223, and the powder that I'm using is a military grade, what they call a pull down powder, which means it's powder that's been, I think it's been taken from unfired shells, I believe. And in that case, military pull down powder varies a little bit from batch to batch, so you don't have a set recipe per se. You have to work up a load carefully and start conservatively and then work up a little bit at a time. So, but I'll get into that in a second. On to the rest of the equipment that I use. Right now I'm using a basic electronic scale, a Hornady GS 1500. So far it's been pretty good. I've got a Lyman lube pad with some Lyman case lube. This is just a basic scoop. This is a 1.6 cc scoop. This also comes in the Lee die kit, and you can use a powder measure kit like this, which is just a set, just a bunch of different, let's see if I can get it open, which is a bunch of different scoops, and it comes with a handy dandy chart, kind of like a slide rule that you can then use to say, I have this brand powder and I have this brand of powder, I want this many grains, so I need to use the 2.8 cc scoop to get that many grains in that powder. So this is called a Lee safety scoop set, and it's handy if you don't have a really fancy powder throw or other way to measure powder. You can, if you follow this guide and you're using a commercial powder, you can use these scoops to safely make a load. So on to the rest of the equipment. I have a basic shell holder where I put my shells as they're going through the various stages of reloading. These are shells. So these are shells that I've been working through decapping. So this particular shell here still has a primer in it, so that one will be a good shell to use as an example. These I've actually deprimed and resized, so you see, well, no, these have actually been deprimed, resized, and reprimed with a primer cap. So I think all of these are done so far. So anyway, scale, case lube pad, shell holder, scoop, caliper for measuring overall length. I've got a remaining shell holder from a box of shells that I use to hold some bullets that I've already made. This is a basic funnel for loading powder into the bullet. This is an RCBS 22 to 50 caliber, and I use it over the bullet just like that to pour powder down into the bullet. My powder I keep separate from everything. I keep it down here in a Homer bucket from Home Depot. So, whoop, look at that. I turned on the tumbler. That was awesome. So, yeah, while that thing is making noise, I'll tell you what it is. That is the Turbo Tumbler. That is a Pro 1200 Lyman tumbler. And I've got some media in there that you throw your fired or spent casings in here and tumble them around for a little while, and they come out all nice, shiny, and clean. And this is the tumbler media. I got that at Bass Pro, and it's basically just ground up corn cob. So anyway, what I'm going to do real quick is show you how I load a shell. So I'm going to try to prop this phone up and show you how I do it. Using a bag of rice to hold the phone here. I've been using rice as basically a desiccant to keep my primers. Oh yeah, let me show you the primers and stuff. So I keep my primers up here in a box. I've got some Wolf primers and some CCI 450 small rifle, small Magnum rifle primers, and then I've got some bullets here, 62 grain bullets, and then what I've been working up are these 52 grain bullets here. So I'll need a primer. I'll get a primer out. So I've got my bullets, I've got primers. So let's see about decapping a shell. getting ready. So I'm going to grab a shell from over here. So these are, this is a spent shell, obviously. You can see where there's a dimple in the case there. Maybe you can see it's kind of fuzzy, but anyway, it's been shot. So the first thing I do is I take the Lyman pad. I will put some of this lube on it. That may be a little bit overkill for one shell. And I'll rub that around a little bit and roll the shell on the pad. You don't need a whole lot. And you can do 10 of these at one time. You can do a bunch at one time anyway. So now that the shell is lubricated, I can flip back over to my resizing and decapping die, and I put the shell in the shell holder like this. And this shell holder comes with the die set, so and it's specific to 223. So now when I run this up in here, it's going to pop the old primer cap out and resize the case. So there you can see primer's gone. And now what I usually do is I take this little tool right here, which is a primer pocket cleaner. It's got one for large primer pockets and for small primer pockets, and just clean that out a little bit, make sure there's no gunk in there, make sure that it's clean. Sometimes these shells will have a little thing stuck in here, and you can use this to get it out. Sometimes you need a different tool that I don't currently have, but I'm not going to get into too much brass prep in this video as far as trimming or deburring any of that. Most of this is once fired brass that's still in pretty good shape. So anyway, this is again a pretty simple video. So now that I have de-primed it and resized the shell, now I need to get a primer out, and while I'm going to do that, I'm going to just take a rag and wipe this case off, make sure the lubricant is off of it. So there's that shell. Let me grab a primer. I'm just going to grab one out. So there's one primer right there. So I'm going to take the primer and load it into this primer arm. And I'm going to grab the primer so I can show you this. There's a little cup here with a spring-loaded holder. So this sits just like that. And again, this is a simple turret press. There's progressive presses that will load these primer caps really quickly. So anyway, so I'm going to turn this to an empty hole. Go back. And now what I do is I raise the shell, push the arm in, and then bring the shell back down. And it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. And now we have a primed shell, brand new primer. And you check it to make sure that it's flush and looks right, and it does. So at this point, this shell is ready to charge. And I've been working up some new loads. I think the last ones that I loaded, I just loaded a few, 23.5. This is 22.5, and this was 24 grains. So I'm going to go ahead and load up another shell with 24 grains. Eventually I'll have 5 shells of each grain weight, starting at 23.5, and then 24, and then 24.5. So anyway, now we're going to load the powder. And so I'm going to grab my bucket of powder here, just open the top. I'm going to get my scale out. And I have recently tared the scale or adjusted it, so I know that it's pretty dialed in. It comes with a 100 grain weight to test with, or 100 gram weight one. So anyway, I take the scale and I zero it out, put the pan on there, I tare it so that it doesn't have the weight of the pan, and then I take my handy dandy scoop and go into the powder, just get a little bit out, and I'm going for 24 grains. Because I've already made up some shells and shot up to, I think we shot up to 23 and we're okay. So that right there is 18 grains of powder, so I'm going to get a little bit more. And again, this is very simple. There are extremely, there are much better ways of doing this. So 23.6, I'm going for 24 grains, so let me just trickle this out. Whoop, that's probably way too much. Now see, that's 30 grains of powder. That is too much powder for this load. So take this and I'm going to dump it out a little bit, just a little bit, and measure it again. 24 and a half. Now I just got to get a half a grain out. That's probably too much. 23. So add a little bit of powder, just a teeny tiny bit. A grain is a measure of weight, by the way. A grain is kind of like a gram or an ounce. It can get kind of confusing because they measure the weight of the bullet and the weight of the powder by grain. So a 55 grain bullet would be a bullet that would measure 55 grains worth on this scale. So now I'm just weighing out 23 grains of powder. I'm trying to get to 24. Bam! So that's 24 grains of powder. And what I like to do sometimes is just pick the powder up, shake it up a little bit, measure it one more time. 24.1 that time. 23 to 24. So I believe that's close enough. 1/10 I'm not going to worry too much about at this point. So now what I'll do is I've got to put the powder in the shell. And the way I do that, again, is a very simple way. There are complex powder throws that you can get that will dump the powder in the case as you run it through your press, but right now I don't have one of those, so I'm using a pretty simple pretty simple funnel and a digital powder scale, and I just measure it out, and I put this funnel right over the top of the bullet like so, and I just dump the powder in it, make sure it's all gone, and there's none left in there. So at this point, this is a charged shell with 24 grains of powder. It is ready for the bullet. So I'm going to go back to my press here. And I will switch over to the bullet seating die. And I've already seated a few bullets, so I know this seating depth, the dial is already dialed in, but I'll back it out just a little bit for demonstration purposes. I'll put the bullet, you know what? When I made that motion over there, I saw powder go everywhere. I just threw powder out, so this is another reason to be really careful. I'm kind of distracted making this video, and so I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention. So now I'm going to zero the scale out again, pour the powder out, and see how much powder I just tossed on the floor. Yeah. So I'm down to 17.9, so let me get a little bit more powder, get back up to 24 again. So this is what I meant a few minutes ago by having an area that's where you're not distracted, you know, because you're messing with some stuff that's pretty precise. And any distractions can throw you off, and if you don't keep track of what you're doing, you know, you can make a mistake and have a bullet that's way too hot are way underpowered, which, you know, then you're going to get a bullet stuck in your bore and you have to get a rod and try to get it out. It's just a mess. Alright, so it's 24.1. So let me go back and do this again. I want to make sure that all of my powder is out. Alright, put it here. I'll go back to my funnel. Set this down. And let's get this powder in here. Alright, so now I'm going to grab one of my bullets out of here. Again, this is a 55 grain full metal jacket boat tail Lake City. It's actually a 224 diameter, which is the actual diameter of the bullet for a 223. So don't let that confuse you. There is the bullet, and you can see a small cannelure or crimp mark that goes around the bullet there. That's basically how deep you seat the bullet. So now that I've got my shell primed, I'm going to take the shell, put it in the seating die, and run it up into the bullet seating die, just like that. Now the bullet is seated, and it is just about perfect. You can just barely see the crimp or cannelure line, which is kind of the way I've been doing them lately, is to have the cannelure or crimp line just barely visible. Now at this point, you could take your caliper and measure for overall length. But with this shell and with this crimp line, this cannelure, these have all worked out to be the right length so far. So, you know, you can look at these two. They're right on, right on the same length there. Bullet seating. I mean, there might be a few thousandths of an inch difference between the two, but it's not enough to really make a difference for plinking ammo, which is what this is going to be. So that is a finished 223 shell in 24 grains of WC 842 military surplus powder that is ready to shoot. So I'm going to put that in a little baggie with 3 or 4 more of the same grain weight, and I'll shoot it, and I'll check the shell for signs of pressure, and make sure there's no marks around the primer where it looks like the primer's coming unseated or the primer's cratered, which would be another indication of too much pressure. And if I don't see any of those signs, then I can make up another load in half a grain increments of 24.5 and try for those. To be really super accurate, I would need like a chronometer and a really good scope to test for accuracy and for velocity. But again, for my purposes, this stuff is really just going to be plinking ammo. I'll get into super accuracy sometime down the road. So anyway, that's my super simple reloading video. Hope it helps somebody who's thinking about getting into reloading to understand that, you know, there's just not that much to it. That's really all there is to it. Now, I don't want to make light of it. You do need to be extremely careful, and I keep a notebook here where I write down what I've loaded and what powder and how many grains and what I've tested, and I'll write down if there were any signs of pressure or anything like that. And so anyway, that's it. Happy reloading. Be careful, be careful, be careful, be careful. Thanks.